So Dune has got a whole lot of changes coming up. We're going to dive in, see what's changing, what's going on. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And I'm pretty excited. Hopefully you're all having a wonderful day. I'm having a fantastic day. And welcome back to Z1 Gaming. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about this message from the creative director on PvE and PvP. So if you guys saw my last videos, we were talking about the end game. We were talking about the PvE side of it, the lack thereof, all that fun stuff. And yeah, we got some information. It was a hot topic. Lots of people talking about it in the Discord. Lots of people talking about it everywhere. So yeah, we're going to talk about what was said here in the future. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm super excited. It looks good. It looks great. I think I have lots of hopes now. I'm very excited. So hello, sleepers. I wanted to write something to acknowledge and address the comments around the endgame of Dune Awakening, while also providing context for what we were attempting. So he's going to talk about, you know, what they were trying to do in their vision and like how they were trying to do it. So, which is exciting. I'm always glad to hear all this. So let me start off by stating this unequivocally. We want PvE players to be able to enjoy the endgame and have access to the content of the endgame. Our goal is to not force PvE players to interact with a PvP system that they may have no interest in. Thank you for saying that. That is absolutely fantastic, because for some reason, all of these PvP players that wanted to comment and fight against everybody, for some reason just did not understand that PvE players don't want to interact with that. I don't understand why it was so threatening to PvP players that PvE players wanted their own endgame, like their own thing to do. Like, you know, it was a huge threat to the PvP community. I don't know why. Our goal in big letters is not to force PvE players to interact with a PvP system they may have no interest in. Again, look at that. No endgame plan survives the first contact with player. Mark Twain probably. We still believe in a core concept of the deep desert, an endlessly renewing location that resets every week and creates an activity loop for great rewards. The tension of heading out there, head on a swivel, eyes peeled for foes as you enter the most dangerous part of the most dangerous planet in the universe. That is all well and dandy. Sounds good to me. I never really had an issue with that. I never really had an issue with anything in the game other than like the lack of PvE. So our wish was that players would embrace this loop, forming guilds to work together to overcome the bleakness of the deep desert. So they were kind of hoping PvE players would just kind of PvP, you know, kind of go out there and do that. But there's something later in here. I read through this already. There's something later in here that had this been the case, it might not have been so detrimental to the PvE players. But as Stephen King says, a wish in one hand, shit in the other, and see which fills up first. You know what's funny is I say this all the time, but is that actually a Stephen King line? I had no idea. I always say this, and I've just heard people say that all the time. And one of my hands is overflowing right now, and sadly, it's not the wishes. It's so funny. Some areas of the deep desert will now be flagged as partial warfare PvE. While the deepest parts of the deep desert will remain as they currently are. High reward, high risk areas. So that means right there, we've got some partial warfare. We are getting some PvE content in the deep desert. Now, I know people are going to be commenting because the people that just want to just push back. Oh, there's already a PvE area in the deep desert. There's a safe zone for where you spawn. The first tiles that you spawn in, that's not the deep desert. You're on a giant rock cliff. That's not the same. You know it's not the same. I know it's not the same. We know it's just there as a safe thing so people can't get hit right when they come spawn in. We all know that, all right? Let's be real here. The reality is that players are reporting being cut out of the endgame due to the extremely competitive nature of the deep desert. Starting soon. I don't know how soon this is going to be, and obviously, like, I don't know. We're not going to see anything yet. Starting soon, some areas of the deep desert will now be flagged as partial warfare PvE. Areas where players will be able to explore testing stations and harvest tier 6 resources without the threat of conflict they may not want. It's important to note that top tier of the game is balanced around guilds and groups, so people will still find it grindy if they play solo. That is exactly what the PvE players want. I have no issue if it's super grindy to get something, but if I can just go out and work at it a little bit at a time, like that's a PvE player's dream. That's what we like. We enjoy that. As long as the reward, as long as we can see that it's valuable, I have no problem it being a slow process whatsoever. That sounds great to me. Landsraad control points, shipwrecks, and the largest spice fields within this region of the deep desert will remain War of Assassins PvP flagged. So, I don't know what this is going to look like, because right now in the deep desert, you have these giant plumes of spice where the giant worms are. And that's really where those harvesters and stuff shine. So, I don't know if all of those are going to be PvP, if there's going to be smaller ones that are going to be PvE, or if we're going to be just stuck with the little tiny spice things in like the Haga Basin or whatever. I'm not worried about it, because you know what? If they want to keep those giant spice things as PvP, I can understand. Again, there's more down below that makes me okay with that I want to talk about here. So if that's the case, cool. Maybe there'll be smaller ones in the PvE area where we can farm up your spice that way. But like the really, really big ones, I could absolutely understand that. The beauty of the deep desert design with weekly resets and renewals is that we can iterate and experiment with different layouts and setups to really help us tune it. As we make changes, we'll send out surveys to help. The deep desert being the evergreen content, it swaps out weekly, it gets reset weekly. That's completely fine. I love that. And you know what? I think this is a fantastic thing for PvE players as well. Like, I feel like a lot of people were assuming like, oh, well, that's because it's PvP. It's like, no, PvE players thoroughly enjoy this too, because that's the new little content drops, new areas to explore, figuring out, oh, hey, this moved over here. This is over here now. Or like, hey, guess what? We found this new area. This thing is now in the PvE zone. You know what I mean? Like, this is all really exciting to PvE players. PvP itself has plenty of issues that need to be addressed. We're taking steps in that direction with our first changes to scout ornithopters. Now, this is, it's down here a little bit. Again, we're going to get to like the meat of like the PvP issue. And like, if it was always like this, it wouldn't be as big of an issue, and why it's, anyways, PvP itself has plenty of issues that need to be addressed. We're taking steps in that direction with our first changes to scout ornithopters. As Valar stated in the AMA, these should be implemented in the game shortly. Scout ornithopters with rocket launchers attached will have their speed and maneuverability reduced. Rockets fired from scout ornithopters will have increased heat generation. Thrusters will provide max speed bonus regardless of wings, ensuring that thruster-equipped scouts will be the fastest vehicles in the game. A new Tier 5 infantry rocket launcher will be added to help improve the dynamics of vehicle and ground combat. There are additional changes to mechanics like respawn timers, vehicle storage tools, hand scanners, and other mechanics that we see being abused in the deep desert. Now, if you don't know, the reason that they're specifically talking about the scout ornithopters is because right now the entire endgame, the entire meta is you put rockets on a scout ornithopter, and that's the best vehicle in the game. The assault doesn't get the rockets because it's too slow. The scout ornithopter is quick, it's maneuverable, it's fast, and you can fire off a volley of rockets like you can shoot off a ton of rockets without it overheating. So that's what everybody was doing. Also, scout ornithopters are relatively cheap. So they're easy to make. Everybody can get one. You can swarm super easy with them. And that's kind of what the issue was. I will say a new Tier 5 infantry rocket launcher will be added to help improve the dynamics of vehicle ground combat. So if you don't know that the buggy can have a rocket launcher on it as well, which is super cool. And I really like the idea of having like these ground vehicles. Like the ground vehicles need to be very, very strong. So because they're kind of hard to get in there. So there's always a thing with air superiority. Like air superiority is just a huge thing. I mean, controlling the skies and shooting from above, it's huge. But these like Tier 5 rocket launchers and these ground vehicle things, they need to be super devastating. Like if people went into a group and they say, hey, there's a buggy with a missile system on it, like that needs to be like, okay, how are we going to go into this now? Because it needs to be to the point where like that thing, if done right, can absolutely obliterate the flying things, because that's just how that should be if they want to have like, a ground and air force kind of thing. So the intended dynamic of the deep desert PvP in Dune Awakening is that unless you really mess up, you always have the option to retreat in good order with whatever you've managed to claim so far. If you're smart and vigilant, you never have to fight if you don't want to. If you run, you'll have to call a halt to whatever task you're pursuing, but that should always be a choice. PvP should happen when both parties decide they want to fight. This one statement right here is going to get all of the PvPers upset. All of the not all of them. When I say all of them, I mean the people that are complaining and whining and throwing a fit about the PvE players wanting something to do. Most PvP players only want this. They only want fair fights. Most of them are not like that. But the people that are going to be vocal and outspoken about this, they're going to hate this because all they want, and I'm not saying all PvPers, but the people that are outspoken and crying about it, all they want to do is they want to come up on solo players, they want to come up on PvEers, and they want to be able to wreck their stuff. They want to be able to break their toys. That's all they want. There was no way to run. There was no outrunning them. As soon as somebody saw you, as soon as somebody came up in their little scout ornithopter with rockets, you're done. You can't outrun them. You're gone. So the fact that they want, and they're like, hey, if you see somebody coming and you just get up and leave, you should be able to leave. You should not have to fight them. You should be able to leave. You should be able to get out. You should be able to take whatever you've gotten so far and run. The fights should only happen between people who want to say, hey, somebody's coming, let's fight. That should be the only those should be the only fights. And that is what's important. And that's all the PvEers wanted. Nobody was ever trying to take PvP away. What we're saying is, hey, you can't farm us because we don't want to fight. It is never a fair fight for somebody to fight somebody that doesn't want to. What do you call somebody that's like, I'm going to fight you even though you don't want to? That's a bully. That's what it is. If you do it online, it's a troll, it's a griefer, it's whatever you have it. Those are the people that were so against the Deep Desert having a PvE option. That's because that's who they wanted to fight. And this is 100% exactly how it should be. Now, the reason for this, or like because they say, hey, if you are doing something and you see people and you should be able to leave. Because of that, I don't have an issue with the large spice things being in a PvP zone. If we're in a PvE area and we're ready and we want to and we're geared up because now we can have the same gear as a top level PvPer and we can actually stand a chance, like if we wanted to, if I see a spice thing, I'm like, hey, let's go try to harvest that. And then people start coming. If we want to dip out, then we can dip out. If I want to take my harvester and my carry or whatever, and we want to leave, we should be able to just leave. It's like, okay, cool. You know what? I don't want to fight. It's yours. Have fun. The problem right now is that they just run you down and blow up your stuff. The problem right now is they just chase you down. And that is where a lot of these people that are so against the PvE Care Bears. It's hilarious. They use this Care Bear term as an insult, and I think it's hilarious. I think we should make our guild name the Care Bears. So, I think it's hilarious, and if that's absolutely fantastic. Again, I'm a huge supporter of PvP. PvP should be when both parties decide that they want to fight. Both, not one. And not because, oh, well, it's fun. Oh, well, you need high risk, high reward. Oh, well, nobody's going to play it if they don't get rewards. Well, if they don't want to play it, then that's defeating the purpose of PvP, isn't it? Isn't the entire point of PvP to be able to fight in the enjoyment of fighting other players? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, doesn't make sense. So the Deep Desert becomes a place where people battle it out over specific objects, unburied testing stations, and shipwrecks, resource-focused islands, and of course, spice blows. So basically saying what they're going to be fighting over. Finally, the intended dynamic has always been combined arms. We have an infantry and ground vehicles and air vehicles. And they're all supposed to have clear roles, clear strength, and clear counters. Thopters will always be incredibly important for crossing the desert, but they shouldn't also be the dominant force in actual battles. We're planning to make more changes to the Deep Desert to accommodate ground battles and reinforce the use of player builds. So in my like just 30-second overview of like how the ground battles should work, the scout ornithopters should be super fragile. I mean, we're talking like a handful of rockets max to take down. Those should be super fragile and super easy to destroy. Those are your motorcycles, right? Those are the things that you hop in that to go fast, to get to where you're going. But that's not what you're fighting in. You're not going out and fighting in that. That should never be the thing. They should be destroyed super easily. They should also be the fastest, so that way if you want to leave, you can. If I hop in my scout ornithopter and I leave, there should be no question about it that I have no issue. I will outrun anything else chasing me that's armed. So a scout ornithopter with rockets should be much slower than a scout ornithopter without, because if I go in without rockets, that means I'm going in not planning to PvP. If I'm like, hey, you know what? I just need some titanium. I'm going to go hand grab some titanium real quick, hop in, leave. I should be the fastest thing out there, and I should be able to avoid everything. 100%. The assault should be the more air superiority option. That should be the one that is armed up with missiles and stuff like that. And that should be like, that should be what that is. Also, like I said, I think they need to have the ground things. Those need to be a lot more damaging and a lot more of a pain, because again, you can fly in real quick with an ornithopter, not worrying about worms. You cannot drop a vehicle without, as far as I know, you really can't drop a vehicle. Like, you can't drive a vehicle out in the middle of the deep desert. I mean, you can, but like, you know what I mean? You typically want to drop them with a carry. So you need to have a vehicle that's like, if you have to take it all the way out there and you have to carry it and you have to drop it, and it can only be down so long before, worms or whatever, it's gotta be like super impactful to the fight. But again, I'm not a PvP player. I'm just thinking about how games have gone in the past and, all that stuff. So let's talk about the landsraad. So the landsraad from the AMA, that was the end game content that I was like, this is a resource. This is a resource board. That's a joke. So as a system, it is an activity driver that is designed to promote the conflict between the factions, internal politics between the guilds, while providing goal thresholds for individuals and groups to work together to getting personal rewards. So basically, the idea is that this is the quest board, is that, hey, we want you to use this system not as a resource board, which it is now, but like as in the future, we want to say, hey, go take out, go take out this boss, which there's not really any bosses to take out, but you know what I mean? Go do something, and then like that'll count for it. I think that's what they want, but the thing right now is they don't really have a whole lot of that to do. So right now, really, the only thing that you can do is resource requests. So the landsraad should be doing that for everyone who wants to participate in the Elder game. Be they PvPer or PvEer, the landsraad should be giving you things to do every day and every week. It's nothing new from a design perspective. We've seen daily, weekly quest systems in the games for a long time. Our approach was to try and frame this system around the greater politics of the Dune universe by having players engage in activities to earn the votes of the various landrads' houses. Let me acknowledge that this is an activity driver. The activities it asks you to participate in are simplistic. A lot of them are hand-ins and crafting requests. That's because the system is in its early launchable iteration. I get that. They don't have a lot of stuff for you to really go out and do quite yet. So right now, what it looks like is the hand-ins and the crafting requests. Which again, when they said, hey, this is your end game, that is why a lot of people were upset. Myself included, I was like, this is not an end game. I was like, what are you talking about here? I don't necessarily have an issue for the end game being quests and stuff, but honestly, with the portion of the deep desert going PvE, I think the deep desert is more of the end game than the landsraad. And my personal opinion is that most people are going to go and do deep desert stuff. They're going to go grind gear. They're going to go get stuff like that. They're going to participate in those. I think a lot of people aren't even going to give this a look, because I don't think they're going to. I just don't. If they want to and there's more stuff to do, awesome. But I think people just want to go out and do those. I think they just want to go out and do those other things for the most part. I think the deep desert is a much better and a much bigger PvE experience than maybe they even think. Because that's what people want. That's the players. I think that's what PvEers want. That's more exciting. But still, it's cool. They're changing it. They're going to add stuff in the future. It's not going to be just a hand-in board. Now, the activities that the landsraad asks you to do will become more varied as we flesh out the world with more content and activities. The landsraad is an umbrella for all in-game activities. What form do those in-game activities take? More dungeons with bosses that drop in-game loot, more contracts that require specific tasks to be undertaken, more specialized delivery tasks that include components that cannot be stockpiled, if we ever add raids to the game, there will be a task on the landsraad to complete those raids. It is a framework that holds the endgame activities into place. It is their board. It is their thing that says, hey, these are the activities going on this week. Go participate in these to do these things. Now they're going to address the problem with the landsraad right now, and we'll keep adding in-game activities and more PvE content to the game going forward, both free and paid content in the form of DLCs and expansions. Cool, awesome. We are addressing some key flaws in the landsraad design: the inability to hand in items after a square has been completed, and the rapidity at which some of the squares are turned in. Right now, once a square is turned in, you cannot turn anything else in there, and most of these squares get completed within minutes of them being revealed. Stockpiling is currently rewarded, but that is not our intention for the system. We want to make some changes to address it as best we can. So right now, because of like where the game sits and like, you know, there's only so much they can put on this board. There's a lot of hand in X amount of resource. Well, a lot of people are just going out and stockpiling those resources, waiting for the next one to open. So it's like, hey, we want 100 of these things, or we want 200 of these things, or whatever. People can go and boom, turn that in immediately and be done. So they don't want that. And then like I said, once the square is done, you can't do anything else with it, which also, it's not great for solos and like smaller groups. Like myself, maybe I'm not super worried about like the overall conflict. But like, I want to turn in and I want to get points towards these because I want some of the rewards personally. I'm not looking for the big reward of like being able to manipulate the server stuff. You know, it's like, no, that's not me. I just want the rewards from the contract. You know what I mean? Landsraad rewards are supposed to reflect the end game tiers of progression. This includes the vendors, which can be unlocked for an entire faction through participation. This is the intention, but once again, let me acknowledge that it isn't exactly in the right place. The landsraad will be updated to provide micro rewards for solo small group players. Thanks for listening, everyone. Apologies for the confusion once a live game launches becomes. Anyways, they said, hey, we're learning, we're doing things. But most importantly, they're listening, which a lot of games don't do. A lot of games have their vision and they don't listen to what the player base wants. And then they wait until the player base drops, and then they start making the changes, and then it's too late. I've seen this so many times. I've been doing YouTube for like 10 years. I've seen so many games come and go because they have their own vision, and they don't want to give players what they want. I understand it's your product. You do whatever you want. But maybe your product as you made it wasn't exactly as you envisioned, and everybody sees it a certain way, like, hey, it could benefit from this. And instead of like, you know, oh yeah, let's try that. Let's try this or whatever. Being so dismissive of stuff is never a good thing. So I am so happy that they're listening. I am so happy that this came out. I'm not gonna lie, I 100% saw that they said, hey, tomorrow we're having a thing from the director or whatever. And I personally was like, okay, it's gonna be a double down on the AMAs. It's gonna be a double down, like, hey, you know, we understand this, but like the desert is not, like, that's what I thought it was gonna be. And it is an absolute breath of fresh air that they're actually listening to the community, and it's fantastic. So I'm super excited about all of this. I'm very excited. I'm excited. We are going to have a PvE portion of the deep desert. I don't know what that looks like, so it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know when this is going to take place. It says starting soon. Personally, I can't imagine it being very difficult to just fence off a section of PvE of the desert, the deep desert, and just say, hey, like, this is a PvE area now. I don't really think they really need to do anything with it. Or even if they just do the lower tiles of the PvE of the deep desert, like maybe make the first like 3 PvE. I don't know how many tiles there are altogether. I'm not even 100% sure, but I know it's a tile-based system. Basically, they can mix and match and stuff. But I'm excited. They're listening. I'm excited. As a PvE player, I'm very, very excited. If you got in the game and you're getting to the deep desert point, by all means, continue enjoying. Honestly, before this, I had no issue with the game anyways. My issue was that, hey, the PvE game is kind of lacking, you know? I enjoyed the first half of it. I said that in every video. I never said this was a bad game by any means. I had a lot of people like attacking me of saying, oh, you know, you just hate the game. It's like, I never once said I hated the game. I said it was fun. I said I enjoyed it. I said I enjoyed the first 60 hours of it. I thought it was a lot of fun. My issue was that people didn't realize that it was going into a PvP area. So, yeah, I'm very excited for both PvP players and PvE players. I am glad PvP players are going to get hopefully a better experience for PvP. I'm hoping that the people that truly want to engage in a player versus player combat, that want to fight each other, I'm hoping that their experience will get better from this. Everybody that cries that they're losing their PvE sacrifices, that they're not going to be able to hunt them and farm them, and that's not fair and that stuff, like, I cry harder. I don't care. Because if you want to fight somebody that doesn't want to fight, that's never a fair fight, and that's never a right thing. I don't think it's ever a right thing. So guess what? I don't care. It is what it is. So PvP players rejoice, PvE players rejoice. Everybody should be happy, and everybody should be able to play the game that they want. And I think that's going to be better for everybody. I was actually talking about this yesterday too in my Discord, and I think somebody commented something about it, and it kind of got me thinking about it. Right now, the game has like this huge potential of it, like everything. A lot of people always talk about the market and stuff like that, and the market just doesn't have anything in it, or it's too expensive. What I like about this is it kind of leads to more of what I was thinking of. If you give PvE players the access and the ability to grind out the titanium, the hard stuff, you know, they can then sell that on the market to the PvP players that want to just fight and build stuff. And then the PvP players could sell the spice to the PvE players. So you have one group of people, a large percentage of people on the back end selling the raw materials to build your ornithopters, to build your replacement stuff, to build your rockets, to build all of that stuff. And then in turn, the spice would be sold to the PvE players. So you have a constant cycle of resources. We make resources, you need resources. We need spice, you make spice. You know what I mean? So you have a constant cycle of resources and currency and stuff like that. And I feel like this is going to help with that and hopefully get the market in a much better spot as well. Because right now the market is absolutely atrocious. So very exciting stuff. I'm super excited. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe, all the fun things. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think down below. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you are a PvPer and you're gonna complain, I don't care. Go ahead. You can comment all you want. You can tell me you can call me a Care Bear, all this stuff. I don't care. I don't care. I'll take it to heart. Care Bears are happy. We got what we wanted, so we're happy. So by all means, I don't think this ruined the game for PvPers, and I think anybody arguing that is just, again, they just want to fight people that don't want to fight them. So they don't want an actual fight. They don't want skill. They don't want any of that. So anyways, thank you all so much for coming out. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.